You know, people always ask me how I survived. How I'm still here, at 75 years old, telling a story that most people would rather forget. But here's what they don't understand. Silence almost killed me. The truth? The truth saved my life. And today, I'm going to tell you everything. Every detail the prosecution used to convict Major Richard Calloway. Everything he thought would stay buried forever. If you believe victims deserve to be heard, leave a comment saying I'm listening. Your support means everything. But before I take you to that room, before I show you what happened at that military base in 1978, you need to understand something. I wasn't always the woman you see now. I was 28 years old. I was a translator and worked on a contract for the American Army in the Philippines. I had a 3-year-old daughter at home and sent money to my mother every month. I thought I was building a future. I had no idea I was entering a nightmare. The base was called Clark Air Force Base and it was huge. Thousands of people, practically a small city. I worked in the communications department, translating documents and attending briefings when they needed someone who spoke Tagalog, English, and a little Spanish. The work was good. Professional. The Americans I worked with were, for the most part, respectful and kind. Major Calloway was different from the start, but not in an alarming way. He was charismatic. 42 years old, a decorated officer, married with 2 children in Texas. He had this way of making you feel seen, you know? Like you mattered. He remembered little details, how you drank your coffee, whether your daughter's cold had improved. Looking back now, I can see what it was. Manipulation. But at the time? At the time, I thought he was just a good man in a position of power. The first 3 months were normal. I did my job. He did his. We talked in the hallways, nothing more. Sometimes he would ask me to stay late to finish translating urgent documents, and I would stay because the extra pay helped. My mother needed surgery, and every penny counted. Leave one if you've ever trusted someone you shouldn't have. You're not alone. It was a Tuesday in August when everything changed. The humidity was stifling that day, the kind that makes your clothes stick to your skin. Major Calloway called me to his office around 6 in the afternoon. The administration building was almost empty by then. Most people had already gone to dinner or returned to their quarters. "Margaret," he said, and his voice was different. Softer. "I need your help with something delicate. Something that requires absolute discretion." I should have left. Right then. But I needed the job. I needed the money. And, foolishly, stupidly, I continued to trust him. He told me there would be a meeting the following week with Philippine authorities and that he needed me to translate some confidential documents. But he said I couldn't take them out of his office. I would have to work there, after hours, when no one else was around. He said it was for security reasons. I believed him. On the first night I worked in his office, nothing happened. Just translation work, 4 hours of tedious document review. He brought me coffee, chatted with me a bit, was perfectly professional. When I left at 10 o'clock at night, I felt an enormous relief. "See," I thought, "you were being paranoid." On the second night, he offered me a drink. Whiskey, he said, from a bottle someone had given him as a gift. Just a drink to relax before starting work. I hesitated, but he shrugged and laughed. "Margaret, we're colleagues. Friends, even. A drink won't hurt." I accepted. 1 glass turned into 2. I remember feeling warm, relaxed, more talkative than usual. He asked about my life, my dreams, my daughter. I showed him a photo I kept in my wallet, my little Rosa in a yellow dress, smiling at the camera. "You're a beautiful woman, Margaret," he said suddenly. "You should know that." The temperature in the room changed. I got up and said I had to leave, that I didn't feel well. It was at that moment that he grabbed my wrist. If this story touched you deeply, comment "Stay strong." Sometimes we need to know that we are not alone in the darkness. "Sit down," he said, and it was no longer a request. It was an order. The kind of order he would give to the soldiers under his command. I tried to move away. "I need you to understand this," I fought. I said no. I said it clearly, loudly, and repeatedly. But he was bigger, stronger, and the door was locked. I hadn't even noticed when he locked it. What happened next? I'll tell you, but I need you to know that this is where many survivors stop talking. This is where the world tells us to be quiet, to spare people the details, to protect everyone's comfort except our own. But the details matter. It was the details that condemned him. He pushed me against the table. He immobilized my arms. And then he said something that, at the time, I didn't fully understand. He said, "Don't worry. This will be our little movie. Something special, just for us." That's when I saw the camera. Small, on a tripod in the corner, partially hidden by a file cabinet. A red light flashing. He was filming everything. At that moment, realizing that was almost worse than the assault itself. Because I understood, it wasn't just about having power over me in that room. It was about having power over me forever. He was creating evidence of my humiliation, of my violation, something he could use to control me for as long as he wanted. The attack lasted approximately 35 minutes, according to the timestamp on the footage that would later be recovered. 35 minutes that felt like 35 years. He filmed from multiple angles. He made sure my face was visible. He narrated, speaking to the camera like a director. When it was all over, he straightened his uniform, poured himself another drink, and uttered the words that would eventually lead to his death. "You're coming back tomorrow night, Margaret. And the following night. And every night I tell you to. Because if you don't come back, if you tell anyone, I'll make sure this footage ends up everywhere. Your family will see it. Your daughter will grow up knowing who her mother is. Understand?" I nodded. What else could I do? This is the hardest part of the story, but also the most important. Comment justice, if you believe that perpetrators should face the consequences, no matter how powerful they are. For the next 8 months, I was held captive. He would summon me, sometimes once a week, sometimes 3 times. Always outside of working hours. Always filming. He created a catalog of my degradation, labeled and dated as military files. But here's what Major Richard Calloway didn't foresee: he made a mistake. His arrogance, his absolute certainty that he was untouchable, made him careless. He kept the recordings on base, in a safe in his office. He thought he was being clever, keeping them secret. But what he didn't realize was that abusers rarely have just one victim. There was another translator, a younger woman named Lisa. She was 19. He had been doing the same thing to her, starting just 2 months after me. And there was a Filipino housekeeper who cleaned the officers' quarters. He had also assaulted her, although he hadn't filmed her, at least not that we knew of. One night, after he broke up with me and I was getting dressed, trying not to cry, trying to compose myself, I saw something on his desk. A planner, open to the following week. Lisa's name was written there. Thursday, 7 p.m. Something broke inside me that night. Or maybe something finally healed. Because I realized, this wasn't going to stop. He wasn't going to get tired, or be transferred to another base, or suddenly develop a conscience. He was going to keep doing this to me, to Lisa, to whoever came next forever. Unless someone stopped him. Have you ever reached a breaking point that became a turning point in your life? Share your story in the comments. Your words could save someone. The next day, I did something terrible. I went to Lisa during lunch break, pulled her aside, and asked her directly, "Did Major Calloway hurt you?" The expression on her face told me everything. She broke down. We hugged in the bathroom and cried, and then we made a plan. We needed proof. His word against ours wasn't going to work. He was a decorated major, we were local contractors. The military protected its own. But if we could get our hands on those recordings, if we could prove what he'd been doing. Lisa knew someone, a young Air Force officer who worked in the IT department. His name was Jackson, and he had always been kind to her, even protective. She thought we could trust him. It was a huge risk, but we had no other options. When Lisa told Jackson what was happening, I saw the face of that 22-year-old boy transform. Anger. Pure anger. But also something else, determination. He said, "Let's get those recordings. And let's finish him off." Jackson's plan was both brilliant and terrifying. He had been documenting security protocols, studying Calloway's behavior patterns. He knew the major had irregular hours, that he frequently left the office for 30 to 40 minutes around 9 o'clock at night to have drinks at the officers' club. This would be our opportunity. But we needed Calloway out of the building completely. So, I had to do something that made me sick. I had to agree to meet with him. I had to go back to that office one more time. The night we chose was a Friday. Jackson positioned himself in the communications room with legitimate work to do, which gave him a reason to stay in the building late. Lisa waited outside in a Jeep she had borrowed, with the engine running. And I knocked on Calloway's door at 8:30 at night, exactly as he had ordered me. If your heart is racing reading this, mine was racing as I wrote. Comment continue, if you want to know how we defeated him. He smiled as he let me in. That predatory, satisfied smile. He had no idea what was about to happen. I did something I'd never done before. I ordered whiskey. Not the drugged kind he'd given me before. I watched him pour from a fresh bottle. I needed to appear submissive, relaxed. I needed him to think he'd completely broken me. We talked for 20 minutes. I laughed at his jokes. I asked about his family, his career. And all the while, I kept looking at the clock. 9 o'clock came and went. He didn't leave. I started to panic. Was Jackson's information wrong? Then Calloway's phone rang. A long conversation with someone from headquarters. I heard him say he was coming to sign some documents. When he hung up, he told me to wait, that he'd be back in 45 minutes. Don't move, he said. We're just getting started. The instant the door closed, I counted to 60 and unlocked it from the inside. Jackson appeared like a ghost, moving quickly and silently. The safe was behind a painting, how cliché. And Jackson had the combination. He had been monitoring Calloway, had seen him open the safe twice. Inside were 37 videotapes. 37. We expected a few, maybe a dozen at most. But 37 meant years of this. Victims we didn't even know. We took them all. Every single one. And Jackson did something brilliant. He left the safe open, simulating a break-in. He even broke a window and scattered papers. If Calloway reported the robbery, he would have to explain the contents of those tapes. We left the building in 8 minutes. The problem with taking down a powerful man is this: you can't just appeal to your superiors. They'll protect you. You need to go further, do something more impactful, more undeniable. Jackson knew a military investigator at another base, someone with a reputation for integrity. Captain Ellen Ross. She had prosecuted officers before and wasn't afraid of the political consequences. We sent her the recordings with a detailed letter from me, Lisa, and testimonies from 2 other women we found who had also been victims. Captain Ross acted within 48 hours. She activated the Inspector General's office, the Criminal Investigation Division, and the Congressional Oversight Committees. This wasn't going to be swept under the rug. Major Calloway was arrested on a Tuesday morning during a meeting with 20 other police officers. They escorted him out in handcuffs. I heard he cried, pleaded, and said it was all a misunderstanding. The recordings said otherwise. The military trial lasted 6 weeks. I had to testify. I had to sit in a room full of officers and lawyers and describe, in clinical detail, what he had done to me. They played excerpts from the recordings. Never the complete assaults, but enough to establish the pattern, the premeditation, the systematic nature of his crimes. If you have ever had to face your abuser in court or in any other context, comment, I faced mine. Let's honor the courage of all survivors. His defense attorney tried to argue about consent. He tried to suggest that I had participated of my own free will. But the images showed otherwise. My tears showed otherwise. My repeated no's showed otherwise. And most damningly, his own voice on those recordings, describing his plans, boasting about the control he had over his girls. The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty of 22 counts of sexual assault, misconduct for an officer, illegal surveillance, and abuse of power. He was sentenced to 28 years in military prison. Dishonorable discharge. Loss of all rank, pension, and benefits. His name would be on the sex offender registry for the rest of his life. When the verdict was read, I closed my eyes and felt something I hadn't felt in almost 2 years: freedom. That happened 47 years ago. Major Richard Calloway died in prison in 2019. He never apologized. He never showed remorse. But what matters is this: he didn't manage to hurt anyone else. Lisa became a lawyer specializing in military sexual trauma cases. Jackson retired as a colonel and now trains military personnel on how to recognize and report abuse. And me? I raised my daughter, went to therapy, a lot of therapy, and spent decades helping other survivors find their voices. I'm 75 now. I've had a good life, despite everything. But I'm telling this story today because silence still kills. Shame still silences. And powerful men still think they are untouchable. But here's what I've learned: evidence doesn't forget. Truth doesn't expire. And justice, even when delayed, even when arduous and bloody, is possible. If you are a survivor, you are not alone. It wasn't your fault. And your voice matters. If you are someone who can help a victim, believe her. Protect her. Stand by her. And if you're an abuser watching this, thinking you're safe because of your rank, your power, or your connections, remember Major Richard Calloway. Remember that 37 recordings that he thought made him powerful actually destroyed him. The truth always comes out. Always. If this story moved you, impacted you, or opened your eyes to something you didn't understand before, please share it. Comment with a word that describes how you're feeling right now. And if you're a survivor, know that I see you. I believe in you. And I'm still fighting for you. Subscribe to the channel.